Hello, my name is Sanaa Green, and welcome to this latest edition of The Gathering Wisdom Amidst COVID-19. When we entered the pandemic in March, April, I realized that there were a lot of um, really profound things happening in our lives. And I thought it would be really important to capture the wisdom that we may be able to receive during this time. Sometimes we can't understand things, as wisdom until after the situation has calmed down. And right now it's July of 2020, and the worst of the pandemic has subsided. We're hoping that eventually we'll be out of it altogether, but we're still being asked to wear masks in public spaces, and the governor is reiterating how important it is for us not to gather and be in spaces where we're not um, covering our mouths. And so I thought it would be a good time to talk to some folk who had actually experienced something dealing with the pandemic, an illness, or someone passed away. And I think that enough time has passed to allow us to be able to talk about a really trying situation, and talk about it without being quite as a little more talk about it in a way that's a little more calm. So today I'm with a member of the Detroit community. Her name is Etta Adams, and I'd like to welcome you to the show, Mama Etta.
You do.
And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are in the community? And I know you have two sons.
Well, I am a mother and a grandmother. I do have two sons. My oldest son is in his 40s, and my youngest son is in his late 30s. And both of them, of course, I love dearly. Um, and my special needs son is quite interesting. um, he contracted the virus about near the end of March. Yeah. And it was pretty devastating.
I'm
Um,
sure. I'm sure. And so you said that the supportive housing where he lives, the place where he lives, called you to say that he was exhibiting symptoms.
yes, that he was sick and that I needed to see about him. And so I went over that evening, and he had a fever, but he didn't have a lot of coughing or anything like that or problems breathing. He was, he couldn't keep anything on his stomach. He was throwing up, you know. And, um, and so I spent the night with him.
Mhm.
Uh, and in the morning, it's like his fever just did not end, and he was coughing more. He started coughing,
Mhm.
and
So
so it was,
tell me, how did you feel when you heard that your son may be exhibiting symptoms of the coronavirus?
of course, I was pretty devastated. Um, One is because he also has some other underlying issues that uh, may have helped or
Made him more susceptible to the.
he was more open to having the virus because of these underlying issues. He has a metabolic issue where he needs a lot of water every day, and he's can be subject to dehydration. So, uh, and he was somewhat dehydrated. Okay, and so by the morning, uh, me and the staff decided that he needed to be transported to the hospital,
Okay.
and so we called the ambulance, and the ambulance took him to the hospital. They
Okay.
were
Right. And so when you got to the hospital, you were saying that how did it feel when the ambulance told you that you could not ride in the ambulance with your son?
well, before that, they had to actually test him to see whether he had a number of symptoms that were that indicated that he may have the virus. So they took his vitals, and he had enough symptoms where he could possibly have contracted the virus. And
Mhm.
so then they said that uh, they need to take him to the hospital. And he got up and went into the, so they took him to the hospital. Then they said I couldn't go.
And
But
why did they say you couldn't ride in the ambulance with him?
well, because because he may have had the virus, and they said that I couldn't be around him, but I was there all night with him. So, whatever he had, I mean, I wasn't sick or anything, but I guess they didn't want me to uh, be with him, because they quarantine people when they're sick. But because my son is special needs and he doesn't fully communicate in a way that the hospital staff needed, I was allowed to be there. So I took a cab after he was taken to the hospital. I took a cab to the hospital, and I stayed with him in the emergency room.
Hmm.
Yes.
And how long was he in the emergency room?
He was in the emergency room for about 2.5 to 3 days.
That
And
to me is just astounding that you and he would be in the emergency room for 2 to 3 days when the emergency room is usually a place where people are there for a matter of hours. So can you tell us, can you give us the picture of what exactly was happening in the hospital emergency room that made it so that he was there for 2 days rather than being taken right to a hospital room?
well, we have to understand that as this pandemic has unfolded, the operation of hospitals has changed immensely.
Okay.
So there were many people who had hazmat outfits on. I mean, they were covered from head to toe. Their faces, they even had their legs, their feet were covered. Everything, you know, was covered. And while I was surprised there wasn't a lot of people, the there were people who were streaming in slowly but surely, who were being tested for the virus. So you had people coming in the emergency room, and doctors seeing them. And my son, they started giving him the IVs, the fluids, because he did experience some dehydration. Uh, and and then they had to take pictures of his chest. They had to give him X-rays. So there were people were very focused on the virus. Okay,
Hmm.
and there were people there that had other things, but that was the number one thing. Okay,
Right.
so within those days, I think I was there for a day and a night, and then that next day I had to go home and shower, and I went home and made him some soup and brought it to him.
Now,
And
why did you make food and take it in?
pardon?
Why did you make food at home and take to the hospital rather than eating the
Because
house?
I think the food that they were giving him was not adequate. I mean, it was like this cold cuts of processed meat and stuff like that. When a person has illness like that, I feel that they need something that's more nourishing, something that has a lot of iron in it, something that is going to strengthen their immune system. Okay. So
Hmm.
I think I also brought some water because uh, uh, his doctors told me some time ago that alkaline water would be good for him. So I think I brought water, some soup. I had the Bible with me, and
Hmm.
I think I had some holy water too. But
Hmm.
and I had nothing for most of those days. Uh, I had this. It was like it's like a scarf, but I had it kept it over my face
Hmm.
because it wasn't until I was almost ready to leave when they gave me a mask. I didn't know what that was about. It was strange.
The second day they gave you a mask.
Yeah, maybe the second near the end of the day they gave me a mask. But all up until I had this scarf over my face.
Hmm.
It's very strange. Saying, you're gonna go there and you're there with your son. They were calling me. you're there with all that virus. And I'm like, I'm a mother. And I, I laugh about it now, but I went into supermom mode, you know. I
Okay.
wasn't concerned about myself. I was concerned about my son. And because he is special, it was important for me to stay in that supermom mode, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah, you couldn't leave him. You couldn't
So I
leave him by
couldn't leave it.
himself.
No, no. I mean, I left him for a short period of time just to wash and take a shower and bring him things, you know.
Right.
Uh, but
Right. But
other than
the fact that you were there, the fact that you were there and they saw you, I think that makes a difference in how he was cared for, because you could
Mhm.
advocate for him. Say, hey, he
Yeah.
needs this, or he needs to go to the restroom, or so you were
Mhm.
able to advocate for him, which
Yeah.
not everyone had during this
Mhm.
time of pandemic, because the hospital was trying to minimize risk
Right.
and don't want other people to contract the
Yes.
virus as well. Um, can you tell me, what do you think? What do you think? How do you think the staff handled the situation? This was all very new. They were still
Mhm.
learning.
Mhm.
And how would you? I know we haven't even mentioned the name of the hospital.
Mhm.
How would you? How would you describe the care that you and your son received?
I was very pleased with the care. There was a young lady that was our that nurse for most of that day, that time.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
she was very kind. She was very understanding. She was very uh, very helpful. She was very, very helpful.
Mhm.
And I felt more relaxed when I met her and she talked to me. And I knew that, I always feel I'm a very uh, highly charged, prayerful woman. and
Mm.
I was doing a lot of that. I had my Bible with me, and I was praying, and my son was asking me for prayer, and we prayed, and this nurse, I guess this nurse was just right there.
Mm.
Uh,
Mhm.
they were very
Okay.
good.
So you were pleased with the service, the
Yeah,
treatment
for the most part, yes.
for the most part, yes. Um, so can you tell me more about one of the things that I really wanted to delve into during this series is the spiritual wisdom and some of the spiritual practices that people may be engaging in during
Mhm.
this time. Now, now you brought your Bible to the hospital. Why did you, in holy water? Why did you think to bring those things? And what were you planning to do with those?
My son has had some hospitalizations in the past, and that's what I do. I bring holy water. I had my Bible, and I think I had some lemons to give him tea. So I took those things because my spirit was saying he needs the prayer, he needs the holy water, and he needs me to lay hands on him. You know, because at one point they were giving him something for his coughing, but it wasn't quite working. So I remember just before they had found a room for him, this must have been the third day, he was coughing a lot, and this medicine they were giving him was not helping. And I began to go into a deeper prayer and laying hands on him and rubbing his back, and it was working. It worked, and
So
then
is
I
he
think,
coughing?
yeah, he stopped the coughing. The coughing was reduced quite a bit, and then and in that same time period took they changed his medicine for this coughing. He had the little things in his nose for oxygen. He was very uncomfortable. So they moved him from one they moved him from one emergency room to another where they had a TV, you know, which I think would help him to be a little more relaxed because he could look at TV and think about something else than being sick.
Right.
Okay, so we were in a room, a private room, emergency room, and they had particular staff just monitoring him and working with him.
Okay. So can you tell me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But the praying increased, okay, and you know, and at that point, uh, they had given him a chest X-ray, and the doctor came and told me just before they put us in this private room in emergency that he had double pneumonia. And I said, first it didn't hit me, and then as they became closer to moving him from one emergency room to another, I said, "Is that part of the pandemic? Is this part of it?" They said, "Yes." He had double pneumonia in both lungs. And I was like, yeah. So, I had to, at that point, it was just, okay, continue to be super mom. That was my concern.
Right. So can you tell me, what do you think the role what do you think is the role of prayer in relationship to illness and healing?
It's the number one, it's the number one exercise that we have at our disposal. Okay. It doesn't cost money, you know. We don't we it's good to have a Bible, but we don't need a Bible, but we do it's important to have it. Um, Prayer is one of the highest means for us to hold on to the light that God has given the world, and that is what prayer is. I remember there was a movie called my Big Fat Greek Wedding, and this young lady had a name, and her mother or father was telling somebody, or she was telling somebody the meaning of her name. And she said her name means the light of God. And I thought that was so beautiful. And she was that type of person. And so I think of my son as the light of God. And so, yeah, so that prayer was helping me to access my light and his light so that he could be well, he can be whole.
Yes. Yes. And so how long have you believed or have the faith that your prayer and being able to activate and access the light within you, how long have you believed in that way? And how long have you utilized?
I think that when I was a little girl, I understood, and this is something I don't share with people a lot, but when I was a little girl, I was raised in a Lutheran church, and my mother played the organ and piano in the church, and we were in church every Sunday. And we lived on a street that was for many years a dirt road, and we had those, back then they had those screen doors that were wooden. They were old-fashioned screen doors.
Yes.
And I was always afraid of the wind. I was really afraid of wind. And when the wind was up and it seemed like it might have been a tornado coming or a tornado in the area, I would sit by that screen door and I would pray that we wouldn't have a tornado. And we didn't, and my prayers worked. So it's not anything that I would share with other people, but it was something that I just did as a child. Because children do a lot of things that they don't always share with their parents or other people. And I said, oh, this is really powerful. And there's something that happens to children when they're little, when they know that they have God's light, and it's really big. I mean, can you understand what I'm saying? It's like, it's really a big thing. It's powerful. They know it's powerful, but they don't attach. There's not this ego attached to it. You know what I'm saying? It's
Okay.
just there. It's an innocent understanding of God's light that He's given all of man. Okay, and but as you go through life, the light becomes dimmer because of all the experiences that you have and the trauma that you may have experienced, or and so you kind of not you don't give it up, but it's kind of like on the back burner. But there's certain things in this particular experience reminded me of the power that every all of us have within ourselves, and that is our connection to God and the higher powers. That it's very important, and this experience of surviving, being in the hospital with my son, and my son eventually being released from the hospital. Um, that third day, they found a room for him, and then he stayed in the hospital for maybe 3 or 4 more days. And then they called me at night to pick him up.
So he
And
had well enough to be released.
yes, he never had to put him on the ventilator. He only had um, the little oxygen they put in his nose, the little things they put in his nose. And then, of course, when he came home, they had some medicine for him to take. And and he had to be quarantined with me for 2 weeks, which was another challenge. In fact, this is the deep thing. He told me, he was saying things to me about the experience and what was going to happen next. He said, "Well, mommy, when they took him up to the hospital, to the room, when they were getting ready to prepare him, he said, 'Yeah, mommy,' because we kept praying and praying. He said, 'Mommy, it's going to be a struggle.' And I said, 'Really?' He said, 'Yes, it's going to be some struggle, but it's going to be okay.'" This is what he said to me, right? And
Wow.
so they took him up, and then he said, and then I was able to find out through research that my mother's people were Yoruba from Nigeria.
Yes, and I also have Nigerian. I don't know if it's Yoruba, but I definitely have some Nigerian blood or DNA.
That's wonderful. Yay! Anyway, so and I also was fortunate enough. I've studied uh, African tradition at a Yoruba shrine in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I have an appreciation for the language, and so I don't say goodbye to my children. I use the word odabo, which my understanding of the literal translation is, uh, we pray that God will not allow us to be separated for too long. And so the nurse was preparing him to taking him up to the room. And she said, "Now say goodbye to your mother." I said, "Oh no, we don't say goodbye. We say, Odabo." And he said, "Odabo, mama." And he went up. They took him up. She looked at me.
So tell me, I see that you're a very spiritual person, and many people who contracted the coronavirus did not survive. Why do you think that is, and I mean, what do you think the difference is between the people who didn't survive, who may have also had underlying conditions, and you and your son? Because you seem healthy. You've not shown any symptoms of the virus.
No. No.
So why do you think? What do you think? What can you what in your mind, in the wisdom that you have experienced, and I know you've thought about the situation. Why do you think you all survived and maybe others didn't?
Well, first of all, I don't want to question God's whatever has happened to other people, because everybody has their own particular relationship with God. I can't question anything that God does. I can't speak for the reasons why other people didn't make it. I don't know. And I would never try to make a statement about that. The only thing that I know for myself is that I am humbled by this experience. I do believe that that because we survived is a testimony to my relationship that I've tried to cultivate for years uh, with God, and the same for my son. Okay, and I had a particular prayer that I prayed during this time. I asked God if He would help us to survive, that we would demonstrate daily in our lives uh, the power of His light in our lives, and that was my prayer. That we would devote our life to doing the work that we had been assigned.
Yes. You know, I believe that nobody leaves before their time.
Right,
So,
and also the that there's over the years tremendous mercy and grace that both of us have been uh, given, and I have a deep appreciation for um, the people who were there for me and my son, the people who pray for us, the people who even now, so many good things have unfolded in our lives because of that. And I need to say this: the quarantine that we experienced after he came home, he had to be quarantined, and I had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. It was challenging because my son has had over the years certain types of behaviors with me, and which were not good. But
okay.
this quarantine is, and this is, I hope I can say this right. It was each day that he stayed with me, it was breaking up this negativity. It was like these chains were being broken that had been on us for a while, and they were breaking up.
So you're saying that often what I see happen when children are separated from their parents during the day, when the
Mm,
parents come, a lot of times the children will be cranky, or
mm,
they'll be fussy, and
mm,
and really, parents may want to just embrace them, but sometimes
mm,
the separation for children,
mm, mm,
when they come, it's difficult, and when they come back together, even though they may have enjoyed the day, they
mm,
come back to with their parents, they end up being really fussy. I've seen it so many times where children are fine, then when the parents
mm,
come there, they get
mm,
cranky, and so sometimes the behaviors that we
yes,
have with those that are closest to us can
yes,
can be problematic. So are you saying that those were some kinds of behaviors that he had?
yes, yes. My son loves family. My son loves when we have our Thanksgiving dinner, and we're at my cousin's house, and my elder cousin and all the cousins around. He's talking about that 364 days the rest of the year. He doesn't have a close relationship with his brother anymore. His brother's not been able to see him for a little while, and and so when he's with me, he cries because he wants to see his father. He wants to see his father. He wants to see his dad. So we just prayed. I have a prayer table in my one of my rooms, and we just kept praying and we kept praying, and each day it was a challenge, but there was something that was being broken. You see what I'm saying? It was something that was being broken up between my relationship with him and him. Okay, it was like there was a he was purging. Does that make sense? It's
I
like he
really
was
believe
purging.
I really believe that during this time, I feel like I've had some major changes in my life. My
Mm-hmm.
disposition has changed, the way I
Mm-hmm.
see life has changed. And,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the reasons why I thought it was really important to start gathering stories to see what what other spiritual revelations others are having.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking that the trying time that you two had in the hospital together helped to break through some of the conflict that may have existed because of being separated.
Yes, yes. And again, regarding prayers, my brother, who's very, very religious person, he was praying. My church was praying. My friends were praying. My family was praying. And Adewale told me, he said, "Mama, I felt and I saw the angels healing my body." He said that to me when he came home. He said, "I saw and felt the angels healing my body."
Wow.
That's what he said.
Wow. So this has been a miraculous time.
Yes,
A
it
miraculous
was exceptional.
And
Yes.
one of the things that I want to talk a little bit more about what has what has evolved since that time. And before we get to that, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the logistics of
Mm-hmm.
um, of how this virus has been handled, because it's new for most of us. Even though there
Mm-hmm.
was a pandemic in the early 1900s, 1919,
Mm-hmm.
for us it's never happened, and so for us it's all new. And
Mm-hmm.
it's believed that we'll have another outbreak of the coronavirus in the fall. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering what things we can take away from this experience that could be helpful
Mm-hmm.
to us.
Well,
And
uh,
so what I wanted to ask you specifically is, I know that when your son was released from the hospital, that there was a challenge getting him home. Can you talk a little bit about that and how people were
oh,
feeling about it? Because that's very real. I mean, I know that there's been a profound
mm-hmm.
experience, and I definitely want to get back to the profound experience.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's very real, and some people may not even have even realized what what very things that we take for granted may not have been in place at that time.
Well, just getting him home was a challenge because, uh, people didn't want to pick us up. I mean, nobody wants to get this virus. They didn't know, and I was very nervous about just finding somebody to get him, to bring him to my home, you know. So I think I called a cab, and the guy who came, because he's a person that has I call on when I need to go someplace. But this was different. When he came, he had a whole hazmat outfit on. The cab driver had, I mean, he was dressed like the people in the hospital.
Really.
He was like a hazmat. He
Now,
had a
before
hazmat.
that, someone refused to pick him up, right?
Yeah, there were a lot of people who refused.
Mhm.
There was, it was real strange because
The Lyft driver, he would not.
he picked him up, but it was just kind of weird. Just the whole situation was kind of weird, and
He
but
was,
we got home, and then
he
he
was
didn't have all of his clothes. I had given them some pants to put on, and I don't know what was going on, but he had his not his gown on, but they didn't put all of his clothes on him. But at that point, I just wanted to get him home, so I wasn't concerned. I was going to make a big deal about that. Um, and so I got him home, and that was it. You know, we were in
but there
quarantine.
there was a driver that did not feel
There
comfortable.
were other people that I knew that I asked them. They said they just couldn't do it, and I can understand it. But it felt bad. I mean, I felt bad,
Yeah.
because there was no really family members I could really call on, and you know, uh, I didn't want to. I just didn't want to ask them, for help. And then they live pretty far away. So I and then I didn't have a lot of people that I could call on, but the people that I knew, people were afraid. You know, there was one woman who, very kind woman, and I worked. My last employment was with the Charles Wright Museum, and she was one of the uh, staff there, and she's always kept her contact with me since my ending my employment there. And she would come by and bring me food and things like that. But that, when I asked her to if she could pick us, she said, "Oh no, I can't jeopardize me and the people in my family." You know, so you felt bad, like, oh my goodness, you just felt, and it was difficult for my son because he's used to being in a situation where there's transportation, and I had to. Uh, I really wasn't shouldn't have been going out, but I couldn't keep him. He was used to going out, so there was one young lady who took us to Belle Isle one day, or take us to the store, and just to get out the house and then get back in. And we always had our mask on, and I think we had gloves also at that time. So it was pretty challenging.
So,
Pretty challenging.
if you would, and before we get back to some of the revelations that you experienced, what I'd like to look at is what I mean. So here we are here you are in a very trying. We're all in a very trying situation.
Mhm.
If someone you love is ill, and
Mhm.
then what we often need is for people to rally around us. Just like
Mhm.
there are many people who have lost loved ones, whose loved ones have passed away, who have not been
Mhm.
able to have a funeral.
Yes.
So what I really would like to understand, so that we can keep this for prosperity.
Mhm.
What did it feel like to be um, sick, or have someone who's sick, and then not be able to have the kinds of supports that you might have been used to in a different situation?
I think first it's scary. It's I mean, anybody feeling like they're being rejected, even for good reasons, is not a good feeling.
Not a good feeling.
But yes, it's not a good feeling, but that drew us closer into prayer. That drew us stronger into trusting in in God. That was it. So our prayers became more, the tears became a little deeper, okay? Crying and praying and listening to certain kind of musics to lift our spirits, the gospels and spirituals, um, and other kinds of music to strengthen us was what got us through. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. So do you feel now that this situation has strengthened your faith, or
Yes, it's an assurity, not only for me, but it's. I feel like I'm the kind of person that I know people that have said things about me, and that were not kind, you know, and and questioned who I was, or questioned my faith, or just questioned who I am, and do you have a relationship with Jesus, and do you love Jesus, and do you love the Lord? I was raised in a Lutheran Christian church. I don't know maybe Jesus as well as some other people, but I know Jesus. Okay. And so to me, it was a vindication. It was like, if you survive that, you have something going on. Okay. Not only you, but your son. And I said, I have a very good example of this. The person who so kind and was able to get him into one of the homes, this nice supportive housing he was in. He had to come and pick up uh, some of his funds to pay his rent and all of that. And when he got back into the home, and he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing?" You look better than you did the last time I saw you. And I
So
was like,
after being in the
and I raised my hands.
illness, you look even better and
Yeah, he
younger
said,
than
and
before.
I raised my hands and I said, don't look at me, look at the glory of God. That's it. That's it.
Now, how have you changed? How have you changed since March? Can you
I,
see any changes in
think
yourself?
I'm an older woman, so I've always been prayerful, but it's now it's a deep um it's like a feeling of every day that you awake, it's very important to do what you said you're going to do and find a way to do it.
You mean what you said you were going to do before you incarnated into this life?
Just I'm yeah, the mission that God has given us, yes. The mission that God has given us, the mission that unfolds each day, because we don't always know what it is that we are to do. But there have been some wonderful things that have happened since we survived this trauma.
Yes. So one thing that happened is that some of the conflicts that
Mhm.
made your relationship with your son sometimes problematic have been softened and
Broken,
smooth, and so the
broken
relationship
up.
is
It's like
smooth. Okay. Well,
yes,
what else has happened?
our relationship is much better. Our relationship is much better. I'm helping him to understand because he has this a level of anger about not having certain people in his life. And so, what I'm able to share with him now, he's able to understand so many things now. And I share with him that we cannot hold anger. There is a church that we belong to, and the minister wrote a pamphlet about God can fix it. And so, when he comes home, I show him that we don't fix anything, but God can. And I read that to him, and I read it to myself to remind us that our connection to the Lord is critical right now. And that each day we wake up and the sun shines and the rain falls and the leaves on the tree become the flowers are come up. It's a blessing because we're all um, as was shared with me when I was studying African tradition. Well, we are all divine creatures, the dogs and the animals and the water and the trees and the leaves and we are divine people. And this pandemic is helping us to understand it's important for us to treat each other as divine beings. If we take care of our each other the way we take care of our flowers and our dogs and all these other things that are precious in our life, it's important for us to take care of each other in our family and outside of our family. So I think we're all being this pandemic is helping us to be aware of what really is important. Yeah, people want to be successful, they want to make money and whatever and whatever. But the real beauty of this world is our relationships to other people, to man. That's it. And if we can work to continue to understand who each one of us who we are and what we each have to give, we have the potential to create another world that will that the light of God can really grow. Okay. And I'm not talking about religions. I'm not talking about spiritual paths. I'm just talking about this is for any and everybody. I'm not trying to promote anything here. I'm saying that all of us can benefit from what we learn from this experience if we're willing to be quiet and listen.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time, and thank you for sharing your experience. And we look forward to, you have a book coming out, so we'll look forward to hearing more about that when when
Yes,
when it's about Adewale. So we'll look
yes.
forward to that. What's the name of it?
The name of the book is Adewale and the Thunder Kings.
Well, we'll look
I
out
wrote
for
it
it.
in 1998, and that's also a gift from God. Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.